Innovation is a word that's only been around in the English vocabulary for 63 years. A lot of people don't know that, and if you did know that, that's great. Now, we all know that poverty is super easy to fix, and using modular dynamicism, we can recreate, unfold, resequence, understand, and reshape the way we think of thought itself. By constantly monitoring thought itself, it will not only lead you nowhere, it will give you a headache. So try not to do that. Instead, try to do something that's way outside of the box. Like some place that if you were to see how far away from the box you were, you wouldn't even be able to tell what that box was anymore compared to the landscape that you're comparing it against. Getting outside of the box is more than just getting out of a box and walking away. As children know, sometimes boxes are very difficult to get out of. Why is it any different for us? Between glass ceilings, dirt floors, and boxes, we need to know that a bottom-up approach is not only an approach that starts from somewhere that we believe to be the bottom, but an approach that was painted by several painters throughout the ages and the age that led us to understand where can we be sometime in the future from now. And I can guarantee you, you will move at least 20 feet within the next hour. I can guarantee you that, and I have algorithms that can divine and predict that, utilizing movement prediction patterns, hair follicle samples that have been taken throughout the entire time that you've been here. And of course, the common spectral analysis. Now, we know that everything here is an illusion and that we are somewhere else. But the cool thing about that is it feels pretty real. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty convincing. So, big credit to those people working hard there.
You're listening to ZM Global Radio. That was Reggie Watts performing at PopTech 2011. The selection is titled A Send-Off in Style, available on YouTube for your viewing pleasure. I'm Jen Wilding, the United States coordinator of the Zeitgeist Movement. This show is part one of a two-part pre-recorded panel discussion with myself and several other chapter coordinators as we discuss various types of activism and what individuals can do to get involved in the movement from inside or outside the chapter structure. So, without further ado, we begin part one. So welcome to our broadcast with the panel of coordinators who do coordination within the United States. I am the coordinator for the United States, although there's not a United States chapter per se. I'm more of a contact to host meetings and facilitate communication among this group of people that are represented, quite a few of them here tonight, to just talk about activism and what they've been doing, what's been working for them, and hopefully inspire other people to get involved. But first, we're going to go down the line and have everybody introduce themselves, their name, and the state they coordinate for or city they coordinate for. We'll start with Adam.
Hi, everyone. This is Adam. I'm the Maryland State Coordinator.
Hello, this is Austin, the Illinois State Coordinator.
This is Bakari. I am the Georgia State Coordinator.
Hi, I'm Gary. I've been the North Carolina State Coordinator for about a year and a half.
Stephen Carroll, Mississippi State Coordinator.
Hi, this is Carl. I'm the Coordinator for New Jersey.
Raul Matra, Virginia Coordinator.
This is Chris, otherwise known as Tenoro, and the Louisiana Coordinator.
And hi, I'm Jason Lord. I'm the Coordinator for California.
Great. Thanks for joining us for this broadcast. and for being brave enough to come and put yourself out there and let people know what you're doing. I thought it would be good to start with answering the question as a coordinator, what's been your most successful or well-received event that you were a part of, and why do you think it went well? Let us know what the secret ingredients were for that. So who wants to start? Oh, it looks like we'll start with Adam in Maryland.
Thanks. So I think the best received, or at least the best attended event that we had was our screening of Zeitgeist Moving Forward back in January. It seemed that it brought out a lot of people that were familiar with the films, and it gave them an opportunity to sort of see other people being involved. And overall, it just seemed like it was a great event. We had a nice venue set up, and for the most part, everyone that attended had a great time, enjoyed the film. We had reserved 2 hours after the film just for people to talk, so I think it was a good opportunity for people to get out and share and just be with some like-minded people. In terms of engaging the public and sort of presenting these ideas to new individuals, though, I think our best event is a yearly festival we do. It's called EcoFest. And just the company and sort of the participants that come out for that, the people that come out to an event like that, they seem to be very open-minded and sort of halfway leading in our direction to start with, even if they may not know who we are exactly. So I think we probably get our best conversations and the warmest feedback from the public at an event like that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And now I'm going to go to Carl in New Jersey. Carl, let us know what some of your successful events have been.
Well, our best events have been our appearances at festivals. As a chapter goal, we are to spread the word. And here we're in front of new faces. We hook them with free water or free apple or something, and it engages conversation, and you get the DVD in their hands. It's a good way to outreach. Also, these festivals are very like-minded oftentimes. So if you go to the right one, a yoga festival, a young person's music festival, people are receptive. Let's put it that way. You know, Z-Day was a lot of fun. We had PowerPoint presentation. There's the crowd, and we're listening to speeches, and there's an open forum. And the media festival was a blast because I got to MC it. But if our goal is to spread the word, it's our appearances at festivals for the New Jersey chapter that really made a difference.
Fantastic. And now we're going to go to Tenaro in Louisiana.
I have to side with Adam in that our best event in Louisiana would probably have to be the release of Zeitgeist Moving Forward back in January of 2011. We had a fairly decent venue set up. I'm surprised the event went as well as it did because there was some complications getting the equipment. One of the less active members of the Shreveport chapter was supposed to bring some sound equipment, and he wasn't able to make it. So I had to jump in and, I guess, find alternatives for the sound equipment. We were able to watch the movie. And probably one of the best things that happened at the event is the OLA coordinator, Missy, who wasn't able to attend, still made her presence known by calling up here from Ola, Louisiana, and having pizza delivered. So she was able to contribute some food to the event. A number of people showed up, faces that I'd never seen before, people who saw my promoting of the event on the internet. They saw flyers that I had placed all around town and at the library, which was the venue where the event was held. And they said that they had seen the first movie and they didn't know what it was all about, so they wanted to show up and watch the third movie. And there were lots of questions being asked afterwards. I had a Q&A after the event, and as far as I know, nobody walked away disappointed.
Great, thanks for sharing. We do have some really good tools with those film screenings. It gives the chapter interest a boost when we have something globally, especially. So next on the panel, Stephen from Mississippi wants to tell us about one of his successful events.
Thank you, Jen. I'm still fairly new to the movement. Honored to participate are going to Austin for their premiere in Texas, which about 300 people turned out, it seemed, which was so they had a really nice event. But I'd have to say the most successful event that I was a part of was the event we had recently here in Hattiesburg. We called it Zeit Night. As far as I know, it was the first event for our state. Myself and several other local members and not so local members worked together to bring some out-of-town speakers together, some musicians, and we played a lot of media for the local public. We also started a mailing list and handed the mailing list around, and anybody who's supportive gave us their email. We handed out DVDs, had T-shirts made by one of our other chapter members. Everything that was a part of the event was voluntary, all the way up to the flyers. As far as the turnout, we received a lot of good public attention. We were put in the newspaper, the local college campus paper for USM, and they gave us a full feature article. We also had about 44 in attendance, and like I said, not a single person left. They all stayed and got the information. So I know that now that those people who came out and saw us are more comfortable, I'm willing to bet that they'll bring some more people out next time around.
Thanks. Sounds great. And 44 people is a pretty good turnout when you're still early in the development stages. So that means you did a pretty good job of getting the word out. And definitely with the press releases, I'm sure that gave you a kick. We're going to move on now to Raul in Virginia.
Thanks, Jen. I, too, have had a much smaller chapter here in Virginia. I'd say there are 2 events that I can recall that, and I call them events, even though it was just me at the time. The first was I was providing tax services through the United Way, and they basically provided them from January through April, and I had a facility in a low-income neighborhood, and the facility had TV. It had several computers, and basically people would come in and get their taxes done. And it took a little while. Sometimes they'd have to wait. And every day, I just always have Zeitgeist Moving Forward playing on that player on that TV. And if I didn't have that playing, sometimes I would have that playing, and I had sort of a little smaller room. While doing the taxes, I had a Peter Joseph lecture going on in the background. A lot of times, there's not a lot of words that need to be spoken, and they're just getting a chance to listen. And it really evoked a lot of great conversation when they would just hear a powerful phrase, a powerful statement. They would ask me what it was about, and I would love just engaging them and telling them about it. And the other experience I had was actually basically there was this week-long kind of class/retreat. It was in New Jersey. It was at the Tom Brown Tracker School, and I went to 2 events there this summer. Both were about a week long. The second was 10 days, I believe, and at these events, I, again, kept the dialogue open the whole time, during the whole event, during the whole span of it. Anytime there was free time, and there were about 100 people at the second event and about 70 at the first. And basically, at the end of the event, on the very last day, when a lot of people were exchanging info, I had these waterproof cards that I had printed from Zazzle.com, and I basically just put YouTube, the title of my favorite lectures, most impactful ones, and where to find it exactly. They were very effective, and as a ongoing tool, I think that those are both very effective. Number one, again, was the United Way, and this was a long-time thing. I doing it regularly, and I think have access to people, and you can do it regularly. It can be very effective. Or if you're going just to a retreat or a class or something, you're with people for a week. Talk to them, get these ideas floating around in their head, and then at the end, give them that card, give them more information.
Thanks for sharing. Next up, we'll be hearing from Gary in North Carolina.
Well, I've been active, like I said earlier, in North Carolina for about a year and a half now. I became involved about the time right after the release of Zeitgeist Moving Forward, because that is the sort of event that really solidified my interest in the Zeitgeist movement, is the release of that video. And I think that from what I've heard about the North Carolina chapter, one of the biggest events that we've had in North Carolina was the showing of Zeitgeist Moving Forward in Asheville and in Raleigh, I believe. But I was not actually involved in that. So I'm going to talk about my experiences as coordinator since that time. We've kind of struggled since then to organize any events around the state. And we've had a lot of smaller events, some street activism, and with limited success. But probably the single most powerful event for me personally, since I've been coordinating in North Carolina, was the week that I spent with another Zeitgeist activist from North Carolina at Occupy DC at the beginning of the Occupy movement in early October. we went up there and set up a table in Freedom Plaza in D.C., and we're there every morning, early and all day long, passing out DVDs and pamphlets and speaking with people. We had our banner and DVDs, lots of DVDs, and we actually passed out probably over 800 DVDs in the course of that week. And each evening, by the end of the day, I would have lost my voice from talking to so many people there. It was a very powerful experience, allowed us to share with quite a few open-minded people the ideas that form the foundation of the Zeitgeist Movement. So that's probably the singular most powerful event that I participated in since I've been coordinator in North Carolina.
I love those one-on-one interactions because, you know, when someone's really engaged in what you have to say, you're reminded of sort of how you felt when you first encountered the information and had something to grasp onto of, okay, there's hope for us. We have a direction we can go in, and what that feels like when you've gone from not having anything, just thinking, just knowing, seeing all the problems and not having any direction or any way to organize how you would even approach them. So I know those one-on-one events really are powerful for everybody involved. And I think next up, we have Austin from Illinois.
Yeah, I think there's been so many awesome events over the past couple of years, it's kind of difficult to pick out the most successful. But as far as the ones that we've planned specifically for the movement, I think the media festival last year was probably the most successful, with 8 bands playing, a number of artists that came out, a couple of vendors. We also managed to raise a bunch of food. It was really an awesome time. But we've been to other events as well, though, not specifically to TZM, but the Grain Festival in Chicago is probably the biggest event that we've been to. I don't know how many tens of thousands of people that were there, but we were actually hoping to speak this year at that one, but maybe next year we will. The Peace Festival last year was huge. Very successful events, and I say successful because people know the movement now, and they come up to our booth. They see us walking around with our shirts on, and they have a conversation. They stop us and have a conversation, and that's fantastic. And oftentimes, we've actually had people stop and want to donate their time and help us. They didn't even know we were going to be at the event, and they'll stop and help us hand out literature or help us talk with the other guests of the festivals. So it's very successful.
I mean, I was there with the inception of the Illinois chapter, because that's where I started in the movement, is first with a Chicago city group, and then the movement branched out into chapters. Those actually developed. And then I was asked to be Illinois chapter coordinator, actually by Peter, because he needed people to sort of step up and start that structure. So I remember what that chapter was like when it was just me and just a few other people that were passing out materials and engaging people. And so it's nice to know that there's a really large presence that's developing there as a result of the consistency. You've probably had that moment where people recognize the word zeitgeist from hearing about the film or maybe seeing the first film, and they may not know anything about the follow-up films Peter has done. And so that's a good in to, okay, so there's this series of films, but it's about this conversation. It's about this movement, and they get really excited about it. Those are some of my favorite activist experiences, have been at festivals, certainly. I love those. I've met a lot of professors at festivals that have said that they were showing Jacques Fresco's material to students. And just, it's really nice to know that those people are out there. We've had people with law enforcement saying there's sort of an underground interest there, though they are not very public with it because they have to keep a low profile. But definitely people within the police force and also even some Secret Service folks, which is kind of interesting too. But you'll start to run into people that say, yeah, I know about you and I'm with you. Even though you don't know, you're not seeing them on your mailing list or on your forums or at your regular town hall meetings. They're out there and they're doing it in their own way. So next we have Jason with California to talk about some great stuff going on out there.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Yeah, I feel like some of the other coordinators here tonight, there's a lot of great events to pick from. And as far as what I would have to say most successful, I'm going to reach back a little bit and go all the way to the global release of Moving Forward, the independent chapter releases that happened worldwide. I was involved locally with the Los Angeles event, but as helping as being a coordinator for California, we had 12 screenings throughout the state that weekend for the film, and most of them were all sold out. Matter of fact, we had several chapters that didn't expect to have the crowds they had, and a lot of the chapters didn't realize the crowd they were going to get, and so they either had to just turn people away or add a second screening. I believe Long Beach and Orange County both added second nights to their screenings. Here in Los Angeles, we had a larger theater downtown LA that was about 850 seats, but I believe we had over 900 people packed in there for the premiere night. I would have to say, just with the amount of effort to coordinate all that globally and be involved with, one of the larger, there were actually larger screenings in Los Angeles for sure. I think somewhere in India or somewhere there was a 2,000 seat theater that was full. But just to be part of that was by far, in my mind, it jumps out as one of the most successful events we've had and reached the most people in one go. There were lots of other, we've had other successful events, if I guess I could keep going, but, Z-Day 2011 was a great event here in Los Angeles. We were at the LA Convention Center for 2 days, pretty full the whole time, having maybe 500 people come in and out on our main day on Saturday because we had an event that sort of changed up during the day. There were different speakers. We had Baroque Shnevitz. We had Michael Rupert come. We had members from the audience. Members from the chapter give presentations.
I was there for that Z-Day, and I think it was one of the better events I've attended. And one of the highlights of that day was the banner walk, which Brandon, who is the Los Angeles coordinator, organized. And he does really well with those because he's kind of the banner contact person. If you're looking for a cheap way to get a banner, he's the guy to contact. And that's actually, I think, still available on your website, isn't it, Jason? The banner walk was really exciting because walking with the large banners with a large group of people, you just have this presence that causes people to take notice. And if they haven't heard of the Zeitgeist Movement, it certainly inspires them to ask, so what is that? What's that about? And that's all that you need to get that conversation going. And then usually people are extremely receptive once they hear what it's about. I haven't really run into anybody who's just adamantly running in the opposite direction, but maybe because they run really fast. But I see that Jason has posted at the www.zmca.org/take-action/projects. And that's where you can access a form and input the kind of banner that you're looking for so that Brandon can help you get a good deal on it, he has a lot of artwork he can pull from. So if you want something for your chapter or just something to have, he's a good resource for that. So I now want to see if you guys can give us some insight into your thoughts on what the movement's relationship is to other social activist movements, such as Occupy, because we get asked a lot of questions about that. And I know that some of you are actively involved in communication with people who run Occupy, or you may be doing stuff with other groups, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. We'll start with Carl in New Jersey.
Okay, so the question is asking what is the movement's relationship, and for New Jersey, we're all about our chapter goal of spreading the word. So we think of these other groups, especially the Occupy ones, as if they're new minds, new eyes. They're very much receptive and often like-minded. So we invite them to speak and they bring their crowd. This happened at our Tax Day event. It happened at our Mother's Day event. So members of Occupy Trenton, Occupy the Hood Trenton, Occupy Princeton, and Occupy New Brunswick, you invite them to speak. They give their take. We're various outcomes, and they go home with the DVD, and we're spreading the word. We even held the Mother's Day event at Occupy Trenton's indoor support location. So I think in terms of spreading the word, inviting these people to your events and communing with them, having a fellowship with them, it just gives you the chance to be in front of more people.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. And Bakari has asked to contribute next. He's in Georgia.
Okay, so I spent about a year in New York City, hanging with New York City TZM and occasionally with Occupy. And my feelings mostly about the connection between Zeitgeist and Occupy is that there really isn't a connection between Zeitgeist and Occupy. I think that it's interesting that a lot of organizations want to connect with Occupy, but simply because they have, I guess, a larger media presence, or at least they did, people are interested in making that connection. I think the Zeitgeist movement can not necessarily stand alone, but it exists as an entity. And if we had the media attention, then Occupy Wall Street people or whatever other organizations existed that are trying to, I guess, connect with them to give them a different perspective or whatever, they would do the same thing. So I think the Zeitgeist movement should stay relevant or connected to its underlying philosophy, its underlying ideology, and promote that itself. And if people who happen to be from Occupy, not necessarily people, not us going to Occupy and saying, hey, join us, but if people who happen to be from Occupy hear our message and decide that they want to incorporate themselves, by all means incorporate. But I don't think that the Zeitgeist movement needs to be in an outreach mission to particular organizations. If we're on an outreach mission, we're outreaching to everyone, not specifically Occupy or not specifically the NAACP or not specifically Greenpeace, just all organizations, all people who are interested in this type of perspective.
I think it's interesting that you brought up sort of how we're different, the way that we're organized, that there's that underlying philosophy, or as Peter refers to it often, the train of thought. And that has come up as a huge difference between our movement and specifically Occupy, in that local Occupy groups that I've spoken with have expressed frustrations around just even getting organized because they don't have a central theme other than we're all frustrated. And they don't have a central goal other than, well, let's just occupy space and show that we're frustrated. And I think that's a good starting point. And definitely, as has been mentioned here, they're a receptive audience because they're looking for solutions for the most part. Not all of them are, but it has been good places to make connections for people who are ready to take an action of getting involved with something, and they're looking for something that is organized to a specific solution. And since we're talking about solutions to root problems and systems theory approach, it is very different for what they're used to. It's not the political angle. It's not the revolution angle. Let's go get them. It's not that us versus them. But a lot of people are receptive to it. And I've heard some good things have come out from the connections that have been made. But certainly Occupy and other groups, you're right, Greenpeace, human rights and civil rights organizations, foundations. What's cool about us is that we are not an institution, and we don't have operators standing by to take action on someone's activist idea. You're it. When you say, what's the movement doing? You're it. And that really makes it open. It's whoever wants to get involved. You don't have to even be in a chapter to get involved. And I look at us as an umbrella for a lot of these other kind of patchwork efforts that are specifically focused in one area, solving one particular problem. And I look at, well, you know what? They would definitely benefit from connecting with our educational materials. So yeah, we're open to anyone, but we're not forcing it on anyone. Totally voluntary. And yeah, it's not evangelical in any sense. We're looking for people who are interested. We're not looking for people who are not interested. It's a matter of moving on. Austin in Illinois.
Yeah, so I always say that the movement is a foundation, and the movement's an understanding. You can kind of take that understanding with you, regardless of what organization you might be with, be it like you guys pretty much nailed it, being Greenpeace or the Salvation Army or the actual army or even the church. There's a number of organizations out there that are doing awesome work. And I think the Zeitgeist Movement just helps bring about hope from a tangible scientific standpoint and strengthens these organizations from the ground up, starting with each individual person.
All right, thanks. Gary in North Carolina.
Well, we just had a state chapter meeting immediately preceding this one, and just so happened that we were focused on this particular topic in a certain way because the discussion of topic tonight was the suggestions for action that were given at the end of Zeitgeist Addendum, towards the end of the Zeitgeist Addendum movie. And we were discussing those in relationship to some of the other activism movements like Occupy and the differences between them. Just in case people are not familiar, I don't know how many people have watched Zeitgeist Addendum recently, but I just watched it again about a week ago and again was very impressed, especially about these solutions that are offered, these actions that are offered as a means of achieving the goal that we're striving together to achieve. There's Zeitgeist Addendum suggestions for nonviolent, non-participation actions is what they are. And I think we, in a way, we kind of get lost in the educational aspects of what we're trying to do. And that's certainly fundamental and very important part of our movement. But these are very concrete suggestions about things that we can do. And they're based on the understandings that the movement shares and based on the recognition that these institutions are ones that are some of the root causes of the problems that we're facing. And that the only way to move past those is to begin to not participate in those institutions at some level. And that's a very different approach than sort of the protesting type activism that the Occupy movement's involved with, where they're sort of protesting against something or trying to cast blame on the 1%, as opposed to approaching it in terms of the institutions that need to be changed at a fundamental level, and how we go about doing that by withdrawing our energy from them, very broad way. So anyway, I thought we had an interesting discussion about that, and that's what brought that about in terms of our discussion about other movements and the relationship of Zeitgeist with other movements and the differences between our approaches.
So let's go ahead and quickly go down that list that you posted up. Suggestions for nonviolent, non-participation actions: expose the Fed cartel, boycott the federal banks, boycott the news networks, support the internet, boycott the military, boycott the energy companies, reject the political system, and join TZM, so the Zeitgeist Movement, and get involved. And basically all that means is tell other people about it, and if you feel so inclined, connect with a chapter to do so in an organized way, and educate as many people as possible. And we're declaring that the resources of the planet are the commonwealth of all humanity, and that is the only sustainable natural solution. Good suggestions, all ways that we could take action as individuals. When people say, well, what do you do right now? As you start to recede, you start to show with your actions of how you're living your life that you are consciously shifting your values to be in alignment of illustrating what you believe is important to not just you, but your community and to the inhabitants of planet Earth on the whole, to the best of your ability. It looks like we have next up Adam.
You know, I think that over the past year or so, our chapter in particular, we've been trying to reach out to other nonprofits in the area, and it's been pretty successful for us. Thankfully, I have two great core team members, Ian and Jarrett, that are involved with other nonprofits, and they sort of help us extend that olive branch out to these other groups. It's been a great resource because they tend to hold a lot of their own events, and it's been a great in for us to allow us to get tables set up at their events and sort of bring their following in and allow us to introduce our ideas to their group. They all tend to be sort of left-leaning or progressive in what they're advocating. So I don't see any major conflict. As you mentioned, it's sort of a train of thought. And I've always, when talking to people, described it as you did, Jen, as sort of an umbrella group where we're not advocating. There's no books to buy or anything, to that effect. It's more of a thought process and, a solution that we're working towards, not necessarily knowing all the steps along the way. So, like I said, I think, reaching out to local nonprofits has been huge for us. And it's really helped to sort of get our message out there where people may not necessarily hear us.
Thanks. And Jason, California.
So when I was reading this question, it's been posed, like, what is the movement's relationship to other social activists? But, my mind has sort of changed the word relationship. I got stuck on it. I think what I find here is more to the point is how are we relating to other organizations? And I have to say, just from my experience here in Los Angeles and listening to the feedback from the other coordinators around here, that we're relating quite well. I have met a lot of people in different nonprofits. We had many different organizations tabling at the last media festival here in LA. And that right there was quite a difference than, say, from other events from like just the beginning, because they've changed over the course of the past few years. But I think we're relating quite well. And bring up again, you guys might have heard of this, the Halogen Solution. They've been involved with both our Z-Day event and our media festival out here. And they've posted some really nice things about the movement and just the mindset of the people that they're engaging. The fact that they don't have to start from scratch when they have a conversation with somebody that attends a TZM event. They're able to communicate and get their information across about what they're up to. And there's also a benefit to the relationship because now they're actually posting content about us to a different audience that may have never even cared what the Zeitgeist Movement was. So in that sense, our relating to other organizations works quite well. In his work, I hope to see our ability to relate to other groups extend into the future. Yeah, we'll come up against some ideologies that'll probably prevent us from having a relationship, but for the most part, I see it working well right now.
And I know we have also implemented or incorporated into a lot of the events the collection of food as part of the entry. So we have collected, I think it was, 600 pounds, I know, that was at the Los Angeles event recently of food for the homeless and things like that. So using our activist muscle for when we gather for our events to show people in the community that we care through action while we're connecting with people. The media festival was certainly an artistic way, artistic expression. It's very different than the Z-Days where we're more academically focused. This is just about letting people know that there are other intelligent, conscious people that are ready for a different system and are even ready to work to build a different system. It's exciting when we come together for those larger events. And don't get discouraged if you're in those smaller chapters because it takes time, but certainly the payoff is good when you get it going and you keep that consistent momentum. It's really just about talking with people and finding new ways to connect with them. Certainly connecting with nonprofits is, you already have that in common, that you care about something, that you're conscious people, that you are activists, and that's a good connection to have right off the bat. Raul from Virginia.
Thanks, Jen. Listening to all the different other people presenting, I think they all make a lot of really, really valid points. Really is this train of thought that really differentiates the Zeitgeist Movement to all other organizations. I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia. There are University of Virginia's in this town, old part of the country, college town, football. I have a lot of nonprofits in the area. Mostly what they're doing is patchwork. Really love that word, patchwork. And basically, our organization is really a revolution of the mind, and we don't directly relate to any of the organizations because we've sort of superseded them. We're looking at the greater cause. I think it's still important to be involved in maybe these other groups, just to basically get in these channels and these inner circles, and then we can further get this dialogue out there. Have them understand that the organizations, all the other nonprofits are really patchwork, and there is a greater issue that needs to be addressed, and that is a shared value set.
I know the idea behind that. Not trying to rain on their parade kind of thing. We're totally excited about what they're doing and just letting people know that we're here and introducing them to the information any chance we can, which means we're going to find out about what they're doing too and support what they're doing too when it interests us. And they're automatically going to be drawn to what we're doing if they're looking for a root cause and solution, and so many of them are. So there's a natural connection there. We're not really forcing ourselves in that regard, but I think the thread of all of these comments is it doesn't happen if we aren't getting ourselves out there, getting out of our house, away from the computer, and meeting people face to face and finding out what other people are doing as activists and finding out what other people are caring about and taking action on, so that we can just start a dialogue and just say, hey, I'm glad to know that that's what you do and that's what you're focused on. Here's what I do and here's what I'm focused on. It's related in this way. We're trying to get at the root cause that affects that, what you're working on. So I hope that we can appreciate and complement each other's work in that sense. And the reception is pretty good from there when you're with the right group. And we can't reiterate enough that community is key to spreading awareness. So I want to go ahead and move on to the next question. And this one is, so what do you say to people who express that they think the Zeitgeist Movement isn't doing enough or needs to take a different approach to bring a resource-based economic model? Any takers on that? Carl, go ahead.
Well, to a level of I agree with them. Let me put it this way. The One Planet Project is very inspiring. The chapter did it, twice in Princeton, once in Philly. We do it with the New York chapter in Union Square. And we do it at our festivals, etc. Okay, but the thing is that I think we need to get into the mainstream media somehow. And sometimes when I raise that, people are into it. And other times people are saying, we don't want to get involved with that lies and good luck. You'll never get on the mainstream media because it's all owned by the corporations and such. And I understand what they're saying, but a few people decided to occupy Wall Street. They were just, it was a neat name, like we occupy Iraq, and they got pepper sprayed, and that just made it into the news cycle. So then a bunch of people started showing up at the park, and the media they were surprised. So it was just another day in the news cycle, more content for them. So they showed it. And as it grew, they couldn't turn away from it. Now it became part of our political discussion, influenced our politics. Everyone's talking about 99%. So all I'm trying to say is that Zeitgeist could make it into the news cycle if there was some event or, some way that it could be on the news for, one cycle. Millions of people would hear the name addendum or moving forward. And I just think it would increase our numbers.
So that's interesting. And so some of the chat while you were talking about that, let's get pepper sprayed. Not really. Just joking. But I know what you're saying with that we can definitely at least make an effort. I've heard of international groups doing flash mob events, and I think any chance you can to do something on a scale that just gets noticed makes for more of a possibility that you might get picked up by someone just because something is unconventional or it's artistic. So it doesn't even have to be all of the hearty meat
and heaviness of what we're about, all these serious topics. It could be something just that's like, hey, this group Zeitgeist, they did this thing that was really interesting today. And enough to spark an interest in finding out more information about our movement.
I think we should have a bonfire and burn $26 million.
I don't know that we would have that among us if we all send it in. Steven's going to send you $2.
We could do it with Monopoly money, but it just wouldn't get on the news cycle.
Yeah, any other ideas? I know that Austin wants to talk next.
Yeah, so it really depends on the circumstances. I mean, it's kind of a whole conversation that needs to be had, but typically I found that, in my opinion anyway, people need to go back and take a look again at all the piles upon piles of literature that's available that the Zeitgeist Movement puts out to the public. So typically what it seems to happen is they tend to have a very narrowly focused idea that they want to put forward, like raising money in case we need to start building some future city sometime soon. And that's kind of what brings me to the idea that they need to go back and look at the literature again. And it's fantastic that they're excited about various things, and I'm happy that the Zeitgeist Movement has inspired them. But, you know, if they want to get into sustainable building practices or raising money to help their local community, you know, going back to the last question, there's a lot of really amazing organizations out there that are doing just that, and it could help them release those ideas that they have. You know, maybe they want to start building stuff, so they could join a local organization that does that sort of thing. That's perfectly fine. But the movement as a foundation, I think they just need to go back and relook at the literature.
Definitely. I mean, there's definitely an understanding there that one of the biggest things about what we're doing, the heart of it, is the value system shift. And that is what will not only create it, but it would allow it to be maintained. And without that, even if you tried to build something high tech or, you know, with a sustainable design in mind, it doesn't work if people don't understand why it's different than what they just were in that may have been more comfortable for them if they haven't had that shift take place. And the only way that shift takes place is through education. You can't want something you don't know about. You can't prefer it over the current system unless you know why you would prefer it. And because we're not forcing it on people, they need to choose it. So it does make it complicated. It does make it frustrating because we can see a long road ahead of us, but it does show that activism is, when you're communicating the information, it is the first step to anything, and that people are exploring sustainable technology on their own, that they're getting involved with their communities and in a volunteer sense on their own, that they're integrating that into their lifestyle is fantastic. I think it's a byproduct of what we do. It's a natural growth of what happens when you have a personal value shift, but the information comes first.
Yeah, I wanted to add also that the people that I, anyway, typically hear this from are people that tend to seclude themselves from actual events. And there is stuff going on, but they're not taking part in any of it. So the community is doing stuff all the time, even without the Zeitgeist Movement. If typically there's organizations around that are trying to create change, trying to help out the community, but they seem to just be looking in the wrong places, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And they need to see that things are happening.
Good point. All right. So now, Adam, we'll have you go next.
So I think what I have to say sort of kind of reinforces Austin and what Austin was saying, and Jen, what you're saying. You know, when I hear that question come from people, it does tend to come from people who may be more of armchair enthusiasts, and they're not the ones that are coming out to our events, or they're not coming out to help volunteer. So, I think my response would be to challenge that person and ask them, well, what are they doing to sort of put these ideas forward, and what are they doing to sort of move and work in the right direction? You know, we are supposed to be a leaderless movement, so if there is a project out there that you want to see get started, you don't have to wait around for anyone to do it. You know, take the initiative and be your own leader. I think a lot of times people sort of tend to sit on the sidelines waiting to be told what to do, and that's absolutely not what we're going for. If there's an event or a festival that you think we should get in at, you know, go ahead and get it lined up. Your coordinators don't have to be the ones to initiate that, and you know, thankfully in my chapter that's not the case. You know, all of our team members sort of have this sense of ownership when it comes to projects that they want to do. So I think that's really important. But, you know, practical advice for someone that doesn't know how to get involved, you know, talking to people, I think, is probably the number one thing that you can do. Just opening the conversation to anyone you can. Look for opportunities and sort of tailor your conversations with people so that, you know, you can kind of come at it at an angle where it's not going to be threatening material for them.
Great. Thanks for that. And Bakari wanted to add some commentary.
Okay, so I almost want to use Jacques Fresco's quote here about people who say we're not doing enough. What can we do to make the world better? And Jacques Fresco would say, well, you got to get up off your ass and make it better. You know? So, man, I don't even really have anything to say about people who feel like we're not doing enough. We grew in 3 years from a couple of people to like an international movement. Like it's not playtime. We're really an international movement. We really do have over 300,000 members, maybe more. And the only reason we know, or the only reason we stopped at 300,000 is because we stopped counting. You know, there's no deficit to what we're doing. So maybe we're not Occupy Wall Street, but then again, we're not getting sprayed. So that's why we're not Occupy Wall Street. We're not doing stuff that puts us into the news for crazy stuff. And then you have to ask the other question, is when you want to compare the Zeitgeist Movement to Occupy Wall Street, is where is Occupy Wall Street? I can get in touch with everybody from the Zeitgeist Movement, but I don't think I can necessarily get in touch with people who are still active, like who would occupy right now on the scale in which they did. Most of the people who I know who are members of the Zeitgeist Movement still active in the Zeitgeist Movement. We're doing an International Book of the Month all around the world. Literally all around the world, people are picking up the book that we chose. We're having news articles printed about the Buckminster Fuller Institute is getting in touch with us. The idea that we're somehow a dormant movement, it doesn't compare with what I see. And maybe I'm not necessarily on the ground, like where in, you know, I guess me or Oregon, where we may not have that heavy of a presence, but we have a presence there. I know people from Oregon who identify as the Zeitgeist Movement. I know people from Mississippi. In fact, I was supposed to go to Mississippi for the Zeitgeist Movement. So this idea that we're not moving, it doesn't exist. And it's a false claim, and it's really annoying to actually hear it.
This concludes part 1. Join us next time for the second half of the panel discussion as we continue the conversation on activist efforts, activism ideas, and also recall some interesting and unusual ways people have been introduced to the movement. In the meantime, to find or start an official chapter near you, please be sure to visit tzmchapters.net.
Right, yes, absolutely. Right, yeah, yo. Sometimes in the middle of a forest, I get confused and shit because there's too much interference and shit, know what I'm saying? Vocally speaking and shit. Sometimes people get really upset and shit for no reason at all, just because they feel as though binary existence is the only way to handle things. Yo, so I pick one side, the other side becomes the other side. As soon as I pick one side, then I'm defined as one side. So the one side, well, they're the other side, and therefore that side is not my side. So there is a difference. They must be destroyed. So, without further inclusion, I will develop my weapon systems, my defenses, my perimeter telemetry devices. I will take laser-guided weapons and I will position them on the border so that the other side knows that I mean business. But the other side, they're just like me in a way. They just don't want to be like me in a way, so I guess they're just like me in a way. So when you're throwing it all away and you're thinking about battling it up, just remember one thing. Who's being played? Who's being played? Yo, binary's the culprit. Binary existence, it's your choice. You want to live in the middle? I'd say that's a wiser choice. What, yo? Binary existence. Binary existence, it's the culprit, yo. Yeah, I heard you. Listen, break it down, yo.